China continues its threat to civilization. J.D. Vance, the visible VP. Watch for health scams. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. This week we have stories from around the world. Russia and Ukraine, deal or no deal? So the kickoff was Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska. Naturally, there was no consensus on whether this was good or bad. Some pundits said the big bomber flyover in the row of top military jets that Putin walked past was a message to him. On the other hand, letting a whack mass murderer onto U.S. territory had other implications. Was Trump taking a knee to Putin? I hate commies and especially murdering commies like Putin. I do not like that he came onto U.S. soil without being in handcuffs, like we would treat a Mexican cartel leader. At the same time, over 1 million humans have died. Time to end the killing. Overall, the meeting went about as well as could be expected. This was followed by a meeting a few days later with Zelensky, and this was immediately followed by meetings with top European leaders. They have pledged to support Ukraine. No way to object to that. This interesting outcome was European officials talked about a U.S.-backed Article 5 type security guarantees for Ukraine. Apparently, that's a NATO term. Trump indicated the USA part would not be boots on the ground, but it is assumed we will provide the armaments for Ukraine to defend itself and perhaps start attacking Russia. U.S. air support was also suggested. It is tricky since they are trying to keep NATO out of this at the same time due to Putin's strong resistance to that. There was then talk of a two-way or a three-way summit to reach some type of a peace deal. That is cloudy at the moment. The most recent word is that Trump wants Putin and Zelensky to meet first, and then a trilateral meeting can happen after that. There are massive issues here. I hate to see Putin get 1 foot of Ukrainian land, but the likelihood is that this is not going to be the deal. I do not think Putin can block endlessly Ukraine joining the rest of Europe. I think the recent commitment to 5% across NATO for military expenditures will hopefully convince this murderer that any expansion he's dreaming about now is over. China continues its threat to civilization because much of the slopstream media soft pedals or ignores the human rights and privacy violations by the CCP. I feel part of Saving America's mission is to help keep its repression and violations on the front page. I credit Epoch Times, which is working with its partner NTD News, continuing to keep the focus on the plot to destroy civilization by the CCP. A new international human rights report by the U.S. State Department detailed the global repression by the CCP. It is interesting that while many in this country suffer, the CCP wastes resources around the globe with assaults, harassment, hacking, anonymous threats, and false reports in various media. The report referred to the approach as transnational repression. Those who tuned in know that ethnic Uyghurs, spiritual practitioners like Falun Gong, Chinese dissidents, foreign journalists, and Chinese students and faculty members studying outside China are all targets. The report describes the CCP's actions as some of the most comprehensive campaign ever known. Highlighted was Xi's visit to San Francisco for the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in late 2023. Reports are that protesters arranged through CCP repression programs attacked pro-democracy activists with flagpoles and chemical spray. In the report, it tells the story of a former CCP undercover agent who defected to Australia after 15 years. He revealed in 2024 to the Epoch Times how he was, quoting from the article, sent after a Thailand-based Falun Gong practitioner who had fled China to escape the CCP's persecution of his faith. The handler, in assigning him the job, gave him photos showing the name and location of the target's apartment, as well as several photos of the man and his family, some of which had not been on social media. Note that Xi and the CCP are so crazy they're going after Falun Gong, which is a group that advocates meditation. Folks, I always talk about meditation because I have 2 speeds, fast and sleeping. I can't meditate, I go to sleep. Anyway, not sure why the CCP sees a group that would meditate as a problem. The article also provides information about threats in other countries. It also discusses cyber attacks from China. This is serious stuff, and the U.S. and its allies need to strike back. There have been multiple reports on the forced labor of the Uyghurs, as well as 1 million of them being in forced conscription situations. And of course, we previously talked about the theft of bodily organs. As well, we talked recently about the CCP preventing journalists from leaving even a 7-year-old son of one of the dissident reporters. Recently, I learned that even a Catholic bishop is being held as a political prisoner along with many others. On the heels of this, Fred Lucas at the Daily Signal said that due to the efforts of the Doge operation, the feds will stop American funding of research on retirement in China. I was just amazed that this was even an issue. Lucas reported that research has run for a decade and a grant of $1.7 million to continue to fund the research was just stopped. Thank goodness. The total amount spent already reached $13.3 million in this longitudinal study. However, speaking as a trained researcher, what relevance would a study have to Americans when the entire style of life and healthcare is so different in China? J.D. Vance, the visible VP. It's no secret that I'm a fan of J.D. Vance. I like his life story, his commitment to hard work and accomplishment, and the fact that he really is contributing to America as a VP. After decades of invisible VPs in this country, it is great to have someone out there on both the domestic and international stage. While 2028 is a long way off, Trump recently acknowledged that Vance is likely a strong candidate to succeed him. Part of his visibility is that he is out there, but also due to plain talk and clear messaging. Fox News and other sources are keeping him in the spotlight. In talking about redistricting, Vance minced no words addressing the important issue of excluding illegals from the census and in turn from political districting and of course voting. Anyone who opposes this common sense approach is anti-American in my opinion. Vance observed that counting illegals in California prejudices states like Ohio and Indiana who only count citizens. Importantly, he also pointed to federal resources being wasted on illegals. I picked up an odd piece regarding Vance and his family not being allowed to tour the vice president's residence by Kamala Harris. This is a long tradition in Washington by both political parties. The White House, of course, for the president, and the VP's home, which is on the grounds of the Naval Observatory in Northwest Washington. It's a beautiful property with about 30 acres. When you consider the significance of seeing their future home for Vance's family with 3 young children, the snub here points to just how low class many Dems like Harris are. Gavin No Sense continues to prove he's a fool. Well, the scum Dem representatives from Texas came back for Governor Abbott's second special session and the redistricting plan passed. Part of the deal was that No Sense promised to retaliate against the Texas GOP by redistricting California. First, California does not have the same districting system as Texas. They have a commission and they're only structured to do it every 10 years. Second, the Dem-controlled states, including California, have crushed the GOP in huge numbers. So to pick the situation in Texas, which is a red state, and many have moved here because it is a successful red state, is simply a false flag exercise. Third, the California GOP have already threatened to sue if he goes through with his illegal activities. With the California law against him, this suit is likely to be successful. In the meantime, No Sense announced that he wanted to punch Trump in the face for supporting redistricting. Well, hey, I'm older, 5 inches shorter, and a bit lighter. I'm also not a violent person, but this clown deserves a beatdown, and I'd be happy to schedule a bout with him. Of course, with proceeds going to a worthy GOP or health-related charity. The feds under Trump direction are investigating voting across the country. There's already pushback as the Department of Justice has started demanding voting records from a variety of states. I support this as I believe there is widespread voter fraud in this country. Not just illegals voting, but people voting multiple times, voting on behalf of the incompetent relatives, voting in the wrong districts, etc. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I've never seen hard proof that the 2020 election was rigged, but the numbers from the 2020 presidential election compared with the 2016 and 2024 presidential elections would support the inference proves that some things were really wrong in 2020. A report from an independent body called VoteBeat had an interesting article on the DOJ's investigation request. In fairness, elections are supposed to be controlled by the states. However, clearly illegal acts should be investigated. Department of Justice is requesting standard records relating to voting. I'm not sure how accurate a view of those records will be. The article indicates an intention by the DOJ to record and track voting crimes in various states, especially those swing states. The article concludes, accurate and up-to-date voter databases are a critical line of defense against mail-in voter fraud. I couldn't agree more. Also noted was that the Public Interest Legal Foundation offers statistical evidence to back their claim that states have fallen short in keeping their voter registration databases clear of errors. It goes on to specifically call out voting problems in Pennsylvania and Michigan. Trump takeover of the DC police is well justified. I consider the majority of larger cities in America unsafe. Not surprisingly, virtually all are controlled by Democrats. In support of Trump's takeover of the DC police to rectify the emergency there, you got to see what's happening. The Washington Beacon newsletter had an interesting article. Danger to public safety. DC police misclassified deaths as accidental to drive down murder numbers. Homicide cop alleges in a lawsuit. That's quite a mouthful for a title of an article. The article contains the stunning allegation that DC fudged its data, which in turn allowed murderers to remain on the streets. The whistleblower alleged crime numbers were deliberately misrepresented from 2010 to 2018. Felonies were reported as misdemeanors to make the numbers look better. It's just one of the allegations. And Officer Bundy alleges serious issues like classifying possible homicides as accidental deaths. None of this has been proven in a court of law as far as I can tell. His own case against the DC police is set for mediation. The article went on to detail multiple cases that were alleged to have taken place where obvious homicides were either not investigated or posted as non-homicides. Bad news on the business front. While Texas is known for its brisk economic growth, not all the news is positive. I picked up this story from an article by Zachary Taylor Wright in Trending Digital with the headline, Mass Layoffs Rock Historic Texas Company, Nearly 200 Jobs Lost. Well, it's actually 170. The article explains that Trinity Rail, a 90-year-old company, will lay off 170 employees in Longview, Texas. The company is a railcar leasing company owned by Trinity Industries, and the parent company's profits have dropped sharply recently. Cracker Barrel makes the news, not in a good way. As a health-conscious person, Cracker Barrel is not really on my radar. In a few cross-country trips years ago, I've stopped at a couple locations. In any event, the 55-year-old company made the news this week, and it's been something else, folks. The famous logo of an old man in a chair with a barrel next to him and the stylized name of the store is replaced with a simple yellow sign with the name in plain font. Their marketing team has been accused of going woke or something along those lines. The stock took a big hit for a day or two. My take on this is maybe a cleanup is good to refresh the place and appeal to a new audience. Obviously, I am not in the majority on this. Watch for health scams. As we age, many of us are increasingly concerned about our health. Unfortunately, that makes us more exposed to scams taking advantage of that fact. NTD recently reprinted a long article that originally appeared in the Epoch Times by Ann Johnson titled, Medical Scams That Could Hurt Your Health and Your Wallet. The author encourages the reader to ask yourself if it sounds too good to be true. The article has sections on various risks, including medical identity theft. All of us, regardless of age, need to protect their identity and medical records. Recently, Medicare issued a warning for its covered members to be careful about their ID information as just one instance. The severity of the problem was highlighted with a statistic from AARP that medical identity theft cases rose from 6,800 in 2017 to 43,000 in 2021. I am sure with that trend line, it's even worse today. I thought it was helpful when the article emphasized that if someone uses your medical ID, they could change critical information in your file like prior illnesses, different blood types, allergies, etc. They could also use up your allowances under some policies. Next, something I see in droves as I do my weekly research across many publications and newsletters. All sorts of ridiculous claims about different so-called health products. The article mentioned infomercials, which I always ignore. I find many of the alleged articles are just thinly disguised advertisements, basically written infomercials. My approach is to ignore anything that is not coming directly from a health source like a couple hospital systems that I do track. Interestingly, many times the promotions start by dashing well-accepted medical information to set up their pitch for some over-the-counter remedy that they are promoting. A recommendation is spread the word when you see a scam. I find this valid advice as I often warn family and friends when I hear about a hacking scam or something like that going around. For health scams, after telling family and friends, it was recommended to tell the FTC fraud department. That's easy to do online. Let's all be careful and take care of our health with valid information and tried and true products and prescriptions recommended by legitimate medical professionals. We will live to be happier and healthier. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.